Kate.
Okay.
All right, we are now live on LinkedIn and my Story by Data Facebook page. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm here with Ben Taylor. Hey, Ben.
Hey, great to be here.
Thank you for joining. And why don't you tell people who is Ben Taylor? Just talk a little bit about yourself for those who might not be familiar with you.
Okay. So I'm Ben Taylor. I have a funny backstory that I was telling Kate about, that I actually lived in the woods while going to college, and it made national news back in 2003. And there's a YouTube clip that I put up online, and then you can find some news articles. And so I did that for 2 years. I got sponsors doing it, and this was before social media. But it actually taught me how to program, because I had like a blog and things. But I went to school. I studied chemical engineering, biomedical emphasis, did that for my master's. I worked for Intel and Micron for 5 years. I worked for a hedge fund. We worked on a 600 GPU cluster doing stock trades on the S&P 1500. And then I joined a company called HireVue, which I think is probably relevant for this discussion, where we built out hiring models from people interviewing for jobs. I did that for 4 years. I was their chief data scientist, built out their data science team. And then I went full-time doing a startup 3 years ago, which was recently purchased, and you'll find the press release will be in the coming weeks. It keeps getting pushed back, so
Wow, I
hopefully.
wonder why. Is there something happening now that's that's causing pushback?
Yeah, maybe. I think there's some internal, they have some other strategies with some internal product releases that they want to align with that. But I'm kind of a social butterfly, so they're definitely worried that I'm going to spill the beans or say things. So
Well, let's change the subject now so
oh
you don't say
yeah, we
anything more.
better. So
So today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and ethics. So if you guys have comments, questions on the topic, definitely feel free to jump in. I see a bunch of people already joined. We've got Susan Walsh, the classification gurus here. Got, let's see, John Paul, Jennifer Cooper. Hey, she said, so great to see two of her favorite people safe and healthy. Yes, I
hey,
made the
Jen.
mistake of coughing yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. And I got a lot of messages asking me if I'm okay. So that was really nice of the community, but it really was just like dusty in my room, and I don't have coronavirus. So just clearing things up. And I also shared the link.
We tried to do this in person
Yes.
like a few weeks ago.
Last week or 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, probably.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we were this close.
Yes.
But everything changed. So
yes, I know. But I'm sure we'll meet once this whole thing blows over and all the conferences are back on schedule. And at this point, everything's just gone virtual. So it's the best we can do. It's almost like I, met you now. So yeah, like I was saying, I shared the link to your YouTube video of you living in a tent. I just watched it earlier today, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Guys, you really lived in a tent. How long did you live there? Was it just the one semester or?
I did 2 semesters. It's really good that I got married, because I always like to challenge myself and one up myself. And the first year I lived in a big tent. I had like a negative 50 below sleeping bag, because it's really cold. It gets 30 below.
Wow.
The coldest it ever got with me was 15 below outside at night. But the second semester I was a minimalist, where I had a bivy and a summer bag, so everything was getting really small. And if I had done it a third semester, thank goodness I didn't do that. I was planning on supplementing my diet with Rocky Mountain edible plants. If you've ever eaten any of them, they taste terrible. And I think I was going to like bathe in the river or something totally stupid. Like I was going off the deep end, like full hippie. But I eloped and got married instead to my wonderful wife. We've been married for 17 years now, 3 kids later. So yeah.
Well, yes, I think everyone's glad you got married, so you survived your crazy years.
Yeah, I survived myself so far.
Yes, exactly. Well, so you were double majoring, right? At that point, where did you study?
Yeah.
Were you just like in a tent with a flashlight reading your books, or?
So the journalist made me do that, which was really annoying, because I would never study in tent because the books are heavy. This is back before everything was digital, and so I'd study at the library. Library was open until midnight. I really liked it, because in the winter I could go to bed whenever I wanted. I could go to bed at 7 at night if it was dark, and I could wake up early when the sun came up. And so I it was really bizarre because I don't want to say I was a hippie prophet because I wasn't trying to be, but whatever I said was profound. It didn't matter what
Hmm.
I said. So like people would say, aren't you scared to be homeless? Doesn't that make you nervous?" And I'd say something like, "The world is my home," and people would gush over that or think that was meaningful. Or I remember if you camp if you camp every day, you have to dry your gear out. And so I would study my chemical engineering out on the
Yeah.
grass. So I'd have my sleeping bag hanging upside down under a tree. And based on the news, like our university president had a comment on the media, like
Oh my
based on
God.
yeah, based on the news, people would come up to me and they would say, "Why are you doing this? Why are you living in a tent?" And I would say, "I just don't want to waste money on rent." And
Yeah.
they would kind of ponder that response, which is a very basic response. There's no meaning to that, and they would respond and say, "That's so deep." It's like these college kids. So these college kids are my peers, but they're so impressionable and silly. The things they want to kind of. So if I wanted to go full Forrest Gump, I can
Yeah.
I can see a pathway back in 2003 where that would have been possible.
Oh my
So,
goodness. I'm sure your parents were very proud
oh,
to see
my
you
dad.
in.
So to make the story stranger, my dad is a doctor and my mom is a lawyer. And I went to a private school, and my parents were begging me to pay for my room and board because they were so embarrassed.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That
So
happened to me. So when I was 13, I had a job because I just couldn't wait to make money. And I started waitressing just for tips, right? Like they wouldn't pay me. But yeah, my family was like, it looks like it's embarrassing. Like, do we not have money to give you? I'm like, no, I just want to be independent and make my own money. So it's kind of like that balance of living
yeah,
your life while embarrassing your parents. So
yeah. The media would call my dad for comment, and he would never comment.
he declined to comment.
Yeah, yeah. So embarrassed.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So, on that note, so we're talking today about AI ethics, and I know you're super passionate about this space, and I wanted to kind of get started with, do you think there are any companies out there that are doing this right in terms of handling ethics in AI?
I may be biased, which is much
Bias.
fun.
That's another
I
thing we're going
know.
to talk about.
I
Yeah.
know it's kind of punny that I would say that, but I really like HireVue. There have been some negative media hit pieces on them. The Wall Street Journal did one on the robots are hiring, and I think the Washington Post did one. But I helped build up that AI group, the data
Mhm.
science group, and while I worked for them, I presented to the EEOC, and I understand the technologies they have in place to protect against bias,
Mhm.
and I'm really proud of the work that they're doing. Pymetrics is another one. So Pymetrics, they're out there and talking about bias as well. So I think they're doing some great things. And yeah, so there's unfortunately see pieces in the media like Amazon with their biased resume model, or I think Microsoft and IBM had some racial differences in their gender prediction model online. And these companies are not bad companies; they're great companies, and we all have friends that work there. These are
Yeah.
just unfortunate examples where things were overlooked. And so a lot of times when we talk about bias, there has to be, I don't want to call it a potential problem analysis, but you have to talk about the problems before they come out in the wild.
Yeah, yeah, I guess. And how do we have those conversations, right? What are the questions that the leaders, the board members that need to be asking of senior management or others to avoid these kind of problems that are, getting out there into the wild, like you said?
Well, that's a great question. And there's a lot of different ways to respond to that question. So I think one of the ways to maybe fault me is initially when I got into HR, there was a lot of arrogance because
Mhm.
you have this thing called you have a job title called the IO psychologist. They're responsible for we're going to build models, we'll validate them, we'll protect against class action lawsuits. They actually understand the ethics much better than your standard data scientist. But when I came into the space and I realized the level of statistical rigor that they had, I think I came off very, very arrogant, very aggressive initially, with almost the attitude that we don't need you. Like data scientists versus IO, we don't need the IOs. And since then, I've changed my mind where I feel like the IOs are critical. I see them as the subject matter experts, And I know a lot of times in data science we talk about we're fantastic at math and we're great at programming and we ramp on anything. We can be a domain expert in a week. And the reality I found is the first two could be true, but we really do struggle to become a true expert. And I would say it's not our job, but we can partner with an expert. And so with ethics, if you're doing anything with hiring, the ethical leader is not the data scientist. It would be an IO psychologist that would then work very closely with the data science team. They're really good at warning you of landmines and kind of educating you on things to worry about.
Yeah, yeah. On that note, I always wonder, like, who's actually responsible for making sure that we're ethical in an organization? Like, do we need a chief ethics officer, or is it everyone's responsibility? It's kind of like.
I love that you brought that up because for some industries it's defined. So HR, IO psychologist, and then in insurance, there's another individual that holds that seat. But I think as a society, we, especially from a data science community, we have to take more ownership that you could be working in a space, whether it's payday loans or something else, or it's not hard for us to bring up AI ethical examples where there's no oversight. There's no legal oversight. So we could discuss some Black Mirror topics where there's no one to protect society today. And so I love that idea of the chief ethics officer. If you actually had someone that obsessed about it, I think that would be a wonderful thing for every company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe we'll see something like that show up in the future.
Yeah, I think I actually have seen a couple of people on LinkedIn with the title of, ethics officer or in charge of ethics, things like that. So I think we're moving in that direction, which is good because then we have someone who's accountable and in charge of it. Obviously, it's everyone's responsibility to be ethical, right? Because it's like a whole morality issue, but someone that, helps define the standards for the ethics in an organization, I think would be really, really useful.
Yeah. You just said something that made me react. Ethics is actually really complicated because a lot of times we think there's a global standard. Like we think there's a right answer. And we could talk about something that is ethically not okay in the US, but it would be fine in Latin America, or it would be fine in another country. And we can find counterexamples. And so it really does come down to the local region and what they're, I just thought that was fascinating, that lie detection. So if you use algorithms to detect if you're lying, that is against the law in the US. It's considered unethical. In Latin America, that would be welcomed. And it's not, I wouldn't say that I'm not really in a position to criticize. It's just there are different cultures, different belief systems. We're going to see a lot of that.
Yeah, but I think you're right that there are definitely geographical differences. But I think even within like your own household, you might have different standards of what you think is ethical versus what your either significant other, your neighbor, or like you and I can disagree on some ethical standards. Yeah, and I don't know if that's ever going to change. I think this is something that humans have been trying to battle with since the beginning of time. Like what is right, what is wrong.
And I think it's good to have disagreement. To kind of, why do you disagree? Why do I disagree? Is there a compromise in the middle? So a lot of times people think these AI ethical issues are black and white, that we can just decide yes or no. But there's some examples we can throw out there, like medical data privacy. So you could feel very strongly, and I'm not going to assume your opinion, but you could feel very strongly say, absolutely, medical data should be protected. But I could counter that and say, people are dying. My wife is undiagnosed, with rare diseases. I need access to medical data. I'm not trying to sell you insurance. I'm not trying to do anything to change your life. But I need to benefit from you as a data source to help society. And you actually have strong people on both sides that are very, very committed to absolutely not and absolutely yes. And there's more examples besides healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. I think healthcare is a really good example because there's so many potential benefits to be had when you do pull your data together, as long as it's done right. So there's that balance, that compromise.
And actually, to make this a little bit more personal, so I wrote an article called "Millions Dead Thanks to HIPAA Privacy," and of course, like the title of that is a very trolly title. It's an emotional clickbait title. It's clickbait, but the contents of the article were well received from the medical community. And the thing that's heartbreaking is, so the meat of the article is talking about how you have drugs like Vioxx and these other things that have made it out into the wild, and they cause significant damage. 90,000 heart attacks from Vioxx because the initial study was too small. But we didn't have data in place to capture, kind of this real event, and we caught it too late. And I've had at least 2 people reach out through LinkedIn where they're desperate for assistance to help their loved one get diagnosed
Wow.
because the current medical system is failing. And I have someone in my household that is still undiagnosed with chronic kidney disease after years
Wow.
of trying with like a kidney biopsy and data. And so for people that are listening, they might say, well, these problems are impossible. But the reality is, if we really talk about these problems in detail, they're actually so doable, they're embarrassing.
Yeah.
If you had the data. So if I had 10 million patients with chronic kidney disease, I could give that to an intern, and they could build a Bayesian model, and they could stack rank the probable, causes, and that would be better than what I have today.
Yeah, absolutely.
But ethics is so fun. It's like this. I don't want to say it's a coronavirus because it's like it has all of these different ways to go. Is that too soon? Probably too soon.
No, it's interesting. In every single conversation, the coronavirus, if it does not come up, something is wrong. That's.
Oh yeah.
Somebody even said, "Are we going to talk about the C word?" I'm like, with the C word? Yeah. Obviously, coronavirus. So a couple of comments came in. Said Charles, hey Charles, he says hi. Cheryl says, thank you for the shout out to the behavioral science domain experts. We appreciate it.
Yep. Go IO psychologists. They're really, really smart. Please partner with them.
Yeah. Okay, Deep Patel is asking, what can we do to stop AI from being malicious, like smarter AIs built with wrong intentions of sending spam, phishing, and increasingly political disinformation?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So a lot of times we talk about, I like to think of AI as an amplifier. So AI can amplify good. Think of like a doctor being amplified, like we've talked about. But AI can amplify bad. So if I have these like aggressive payday loans, or if I want to do spam, or if I want to do some type of like a really aggressive scraping strategy to get around GDPR, AI can be a great tool set to do malicious things. And unfortunately, when we talk about SpaceX is a very inspiring company. They have rockets that will eventually get us to Mars, hopefully. Tesla's a very inspiring company. They're working on self-driving cars. Those ambitions don't have landmines in their future missions, their paths. They're very inspiring. AI is riddled with Black Mirror. So when we talk about ethical bad examples, we call them Black Mirror. Coming from the Netflix show, if anyone's interested, they can search Black Mirror hashtags. On Twitter and LinkedIn, they'll find lots of examples in the news. So unfortunately with AI, there are lots of Black Mirror examples that they will continue to surface, and it's our job as an AI community to have an opinion and knock them down. And there've been examples of that. I don't know if your audience remembers, you have deep fakes, which are upsetting, but someone did something on GitHub called Deep Nude, and GitHub took it. So essentially, an AI system where you can hold a camera up to a woman and it would undress her using AI, which is a terrible use case.
Just women?
Yeah, guys are terrible. It was just women. But the community, this is like open source code that's out there in the wild. And, as a father and as a husband, how upsetting would that be to find out that someone did that without permission to someone in your family? And so GitHub took the code down, but that's an example of someone using open source code to do something terrible very quickly. And I feel like we're just getting started. So we kind of have to be really good at spotting this, reacting to it, and being a voice of reason to say this is unacceptable. But a big part is educating the politicians, because the politicians don't really understand. There's a huge technology gap between what they understand and what is available.
Yeah, absolutely. I think politicians and the general public as well, just educating in general.
Yeah.
All right, so question for you. for an organization that wants to, let's say, take the first step and assess how they're doing in their current state of, managing AI and ethics, what do you think is the first step they need to take?
So I think the first step would be identify who the subject matter experts are in regards to ethics. So in hiring, it would be the IO psychologist, or it might be another person in loan approval, stuff like that. I wouldn't want to call out legal, because sometimes the legal groups they default to being too conservative. They will always take the most conservative stance, which you can't really fault them for. And so you need to find an individual or group in your organization that knows your business well. Because
Yeah.
when it comes to ethics, the argument can be made, what are your humans doing today that are unethical? Because that's what we deal with in hiring. Humans have what we call an unconscious bias. We all have it. We're not intentionally terrible, but we have, we're products of our genetics and our environments. And if we're raised in different environments, we could have an unconscious bias that we're not aware of. And so I think having those conversations up front, you can kind of understand, because the argument I would make, and some people might disagree with this, and I'd be very open to getting feedback on why they disagree, but the source of bias a lot of times will come from humans. It's coming from a training data set. So AI is not going to decide to be racist or sexist or ageist. It was given a training set that showed that incentive. And so so the first step would be, let's have a conversation about human behavior.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
some people don't want to track it. So the worst example is you have people that are terrified. They say, we don't want to know. Is there sexism in the promotional org? We don't want to know. Is there racism in the hiring? We don't want to know. And you definitely have to be proactive. So if the argument I'd make is you have being naive and you have being
Yeah.
proactive. Always err on the side of being proactive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a fear factor of companies not wanting to know what they're doing wrong, because then they'll have to readjust and stop and consider
Yeah.
people. Yeah, you're reminding me of the book Weapons of Math Destruction by Kathy
Yeah.
O'Neill. I'm not sure if you read it.
I haven't, but I'm familiar with the book.
Yeah, it's really good. I had the audiobook version, so I listened to it on like almost one single run. It was like 4 or 5 hours. It's amazing. So now every time I run, I think about the book for some reason. Like I started that association. But yeah, I mean, she talks about the impacts that that the training data would have, that we don't even consider, because a lot of people would say a machine will not have bias, right? Because it's a machine, it can't have a preference. But if you're feeding it data that has a clear preference, then what do you think it's going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I like about ethics is you have a scale. So I could say, hey, I have AI, here's my kids fighting, it turns off the TV. That's actually a Black Mirror topic. Some parents think it's funny. I think it's funny. Some parents are upset by it. It's a pretty mild ethical problem. Do you want AI to parent your kids in some format, or kids in general? Have an opinion, we can have a discussion. The extreme example is autonomous war. That, like, if you want to talk about a really hot topic, and you talk about human amplification, humans already kill other humans in war. And if AI can amplify that, is that a good thing? Or is it a bad thing? And this is, something that a lot of people are very concerned about, understanding what could come.
Yeah, that's definitely a sensitive topic. I mean, and who gets to say what's right and what's wrong in that case, right? That's human lives are at stake, not just like the invasion of potential invasion of privacy of your kids playing and the TV goes off while they're fighting. This is real impact. But I'm sure we will actually experience that in our lifetime. I don't know if there's a way of stopping that.
Yeah, unfortunately, you have countries like the US, Israel, China, Russia, where there's big incentives for, a lot of people are very worried that we're going to see an AI arms race where it's seen as a deterrent. So if we have kind of like the nuclear arms race, but and I don't want to turn this podcast or this session into autonomous war, but one interesting thing that was brought up to me is I was thinking a lot about autonomous war, thinking this is terrible because humans will invent technology capable of human extinction. And this professor at Stanford, he reminded me, said, we've already done that. It's nuclear weapons. Like, we already have enough nuclear weapons for humans to become extinct, but we've decided not to do that. Like, we've kind of have this, we've survived past that. And so we've been in this scenario before,
Yeah.
but AI is different. But back to AI ethics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So there was a question from Vipul. He's asking, is it ethical to create AI that could have feelings?
Ooh, I really like that question. That gets to kind of AI consciousness, which
Yeah.
um, so I'll take people on a really quick emotional journey. So if I have a baby AI consciousness, and Kate and I would agree, this is not conscious. It's a parlor trick. So it says like dada, it says ball, it's a camera and an audio, and I'm essentially teaching it through experience. And then in a few years, Kate comes over to say hi, and she's actually really impressed because it's learned English. We would still agree it's not conscious, but we would also be very impressed. Kate would be like, "Damn, like, man, wow, good job. It's not conscious." But if I actually put it on some legs and imagine it goes to school, and if you hit it with a car in a decade from now or in 2 years from now, I'll have an emotional reaction. And so, or if you do something, you can imagine the scenario. And the weird thing is, it is a kind of a linear scenario. So initially, when I'm doing this demo, it says dada, it says ball. If you step on my little Raspberry Pi NVIDIA Nano computer, no one's going to be mad at you. They might think that was rude, but no one's going to feel upset. But
Yeah.
if you intentionally dismantle my droid, who I've invested 10 years or 20 years into, who just got accepted to college, we might be in a lawsuit where I'm trying to sue you for more than personal property damage. I'm trying to sue you for emotional damage.
Yeah.
And so that question, which is a very simple question, is really complicated. Because you can see, if we get to the end of the story, you would kind of jump on board and say, yeah, if you go kill Ben's droid after he invested 20 years of experience training and it feels like a child, it's not a child. It's not
Yeah.
conscious. That's a whole other discussion. It was never conscious. But now there's a lawsuit that was won because of the emotional damage.
Yeah, this reminds me of I think I saw it either on Facebook or LinkedIn, but it was a video of kind of like a dog-like robot that people kept kicking repeatedly in its head. I
Oh,
felt
yeah.
so bad for it. Oh my God. And I
Yeah.
know it's a robot, but still like it acts like a dog and it was really
Yeah.
mean. Like
That hits on, we call that personification.
yeah.
So if you watch a droid walking down the stairs, and if it trips and face plants, we will all have this reaction. I think the old Japanese one did that, Akimo, or I forgot the name of it. There's some YouTube
Yeah.
videos of it. But as a human, you you have this reaction, and it's not just because it's expensive. It's been personified. It's got
Yeah.
2 legs. It's got an arm. Yeah, and that's another topic, is personification of AI ethical?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. I just know that I have an emotional reaction when I see a robot get beat up. So
Yeah,
I guess yeah, depends how you treat it after you um, personify it.
yeah.
So Cheryl has a comment here. So she says that there's literature on the difference in proactive and reactive ethics, and most AI problems suffer from the reactive ethics problems.
Yeah, great question, Cheryl. So one of the things we talk a lot about a lot in ethics is you do have to be proactive. Because if you're reactive, you've already caused the damage. The damage has been caused, and there's no thought leadership around. Well, I'll back up for a second. So today, 2020, the amount of racism and sexism that exists in the wild in the U.S. today is high. It's actually incredibly sad. Companies you've heard of, you would be really surprised. And we do see this. So if your name is Jose and you're applying with a resume, if you change your name to Joe, the number of callbacks that you get on a resume are really high. So knowing that these problems are out there in the wild, and that's something that can be tested. You can, how many callbacks am I getting versus Jose versus Joe? And yeah, so you do have to be proactive. Reactive, I would say if you're reactive, what are you missing? You're probably
Yeah.
missing, if you're reactive, you're probably missing most of the issues. So you're actually not help. Like, if anything, you have a time bomb just running underneath that people don't really see.
Yeah. And Eric Flores chimed in, says that the movie Her is a great example of integrating AI with feelings into our lives. I don't know if you've seen that movie. I
I
think it's at
loved
least.
it. My wife hated it.
Why?
That was too creepy. The whole like love, like him falling in love with the computer. Yeah, it's just too much. I thought it was fantastic.
I think it's realistic, honestly.
Yeah.
I think we're all kind of in love with our phones. Like you'll see people are not holding hands anymore. They're holding one of these as they walk down the street. They're not like
Well,
you-
and so I've said some things online that have upset people, maybe because they thought they're too futuristic. So I've said, I think in our lives, sometime in our lives before we die, the most meaningful conversations we'll have will be with computers. And I don't want to say that, I don't want to be dismissive of people, because obviously we have very, very strong relationships with our families, our kids, the people we love. But
yeah.
imagine if you have someone like Jarvis in your home, they know everything. They know everything. Like Wikipedia times 100. They can teach you. Do you have a question? Are you trying to understand the purpose of life? Are you trying to, and I don't want to get religious, but you're trying to process your own motivations, like the hierarchy of needs or the purpose of life, or how can I be a better husband? How can I be a better father? Or I just want to learn. I just want to talk about politics for 30 minutes. I want to talk about religions for 60 minutes. You'll be able to talk to, and this thing still won't be conscious, but it'll be able to keep up with conversation and recall. Imagine like Google plugged into your brain. That's kind of what you're
Yeah.
getting towards. Like, it can actually volunteer topics that are very stimulating and engaging for you intellectually. And so a lot of
Yeah.
people reacted to that and said, absolutely not. That is the dumbest thing ever. That'll never happen.
I think it happens on a regular basis, at least for me. When I have a question, I typically ask Google because I feel like Google will have so many different opinions that I can, read through and just become smarter on the topic. So I definitely have conversations with Google at least once a day when I don't know something. I don't call up a friend. I just Google it. It's easier, and in my mind at least it's more reliable because it has so many different perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely have a new life that's coming, because you can imagine an AI that gets more reactive with you or proactive, where it's telling you you need to go on a run, and it's telling you you need to run on this new track or this new path. And the
Yeah.
reason it's doing this is it's doing research, and it actually understands your cognitive, refresh. How stimulating will this be? How will it help your physical stamina versus your mental reset? And it will begin to know things that I would argue humans today don't really know.
Hmm.
Like we kind of know, we finger in the wind. You could say, I did this run, it was good. I did this one run, it was great. Like, it was better for some reason. Why was it better? It was more inspiring,
Yeah.
better views. It was harder. It was new, something new. It was a new experience.
Yeah, so this reminds me of a time I bought an Apple Watch. I only kept it for about 2.5 days. So I bought an Apple Watch. I hated it because I was constantly on, right? I would get notifications on it and I didn't like it. I like the fact that my phone is on silent. I could put it upside down somewhere and I won't hear from it until I pick it up again. But there's one thing that there was an app, I forget what it was called, maybe Calm or something that came with the watch that would tell me when to breathe or when to stand up or something like that.
Okay.
And for the 2.5 days that I had it, I felt it started to kind of control me in that way where it would just tell me, okay, you haven't, stood up enough today. I'm like, okay, I'm going to stand up or I'm going to breathe and meditate or whatever it told me to do. Because then it would tell you, okay, you've done it. Great job. It will give you a little like, yay, good job. You did it. And I'm like, okay, I accomplished it. But yeah, I'm glad I got rid of it. And I'm glad Apple took it back without a problem when I told them I can't handle it. I'm sure a lot of people have, Apple Watches and other like, Fitbits and other stuff that tells them what to do, but definitely not something that I was ready for.
Yeah. Well, and when you were saying that, you just reminded me, one of the things I have been really excited about is this future EEG cradle cap, where it's essentially able to monitor your current cognitive ability, your attention.
Oh, okay.
And you and I have both experienced this where we see this when we're tired. So if you're programming and you're having an issue with a bug or something's not working, I would argue we could spend 2 or 3 hours on a bug. If we go take a nap or come back refreshed, we'll fix it in 5 minutes. But
Yep.
before, it was kind of this it's almost like I'm a lumbering idiot, just like just trying to work through this bug. And so the thing I'd be very curious about is there a way for an EEG cradle cap to know, go on a walk, take a nap, go get a coffee?
Yeah.
Like, I know you're trying to fix this bug. You're actually not smart enough right now to fix this bug. And just, being able to kind of run that for you. Because I think sometimes we invest, this is maybe, so a lot of times when we talk about technology, things get I need to come up with a better term, they get very meta. They go very, very deep on like purpose and like why are we here? And one of the things that comes up is we're all running out of time. We're all going to die sometime. And so you
What?
spending
No way. That.
I know that's really sad. So we're all going to die. We need to maximize what we're doing. And if you're spending 2 hours failing to fix a bug, I would say that's really sad. That's a really sad outcome. You could have been spending time with your family. You could have gone on a run, or you could have fixed the bug in 5 minutes. So if you have tools and systems in place to maximize us, it's a win.
Yeah, now the phones have something called screen time, right? Where it tells you how much time you've wasted on social media or other apps.
I think that's good.
Yeah, it's good. It definitely lets you know to reprioritize, I think, if you're abusing some apps over others. So I definitely spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. Vipul had a question. So he says, thank you for your views. One more thing he wants to know is creating a child ethical? Now, this might get too deep, but can...
Is creating a child ethical? So I think the line in the sand, great question, by the way. I think the line in the sand gets heavily debated as soon as people realize it's conscious. So, so we already talked about the child consciousness, where it's essentially dad, mommy, here's a ball, and it's learning through experience. So if you imagine that's not conscious, and it's not really, I wouldn't say that's not a milestone to celebrate. But if I have a smart home that kind of reacts to my beckon and call, like, hey, I'm on a meeting, entertain the kids, do this, play music, cook dinner. I don't think there's anything ethically upsetting about that. But it's making me more efficient. Is it conscious? So I think I've rambled too long on the response, but really the response is it conscious? Are you trending towards consciousness or life form creation? Because if you are, then yes, maybe for the sake of humans, this is a very dangerous thing and you shouldn't even venture over there. But if you're doing what we call decision automation, if you're automating, in this, another controversial thing that I might say is this virus is devastating globally. It absolutely is. And I might say, I think humans are capable of producing a vaccine in 48 hours. And people would react very strongly to that. They say, Ben, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'd say, no. Like, just theoretically. Like, we whiteboard theoretically with people that are much smarter than all of us. Theoretically, they would say it is possible that a vaccine could be created in 48 hours. And now the root of the argument is, well, why not? And the argument would be too many humans are picking up socks. And I don't want that to come across as being really rude or abrasive, but how much time do we spend as humans doing creative work? And the reality is all of us, not that much. We're more, we're going through processes, we're trying to work, there's not automation. So if you could actually unlock human creativity and kind of come together, in a global effort. I'm not saying we could give a vaccine in 48 hours, but I'm saying 5 years from now, we could create technology that could produce a vaccine in 48 hours if there's a new pandemic. Today we don't. We have good things, but they're not what they could be.
Yeah, I think especially if you compare to how things used to be, 100 years ago, it just keeps getting faster and better, right? So I don't see why we can't have something that, creating a vaccine within 48 hours.
Yeah, and a big part of that would be technology. It'd be, imagine like the self-driving car is a very ambitious undertaking. If you look at the self-driving cars, the amount of compute, the amount of petabyte storage, what they're trying to do, if you
Yeah.
apply similar resources into virus simulation and discovery, or like antibody simulation and discovery, we would go to the next level. But
Yeah.
I'm not an expert either in just grand ideas.
Yes.
Go team humans.
Yes, go Team Humans. Robin is just saying thank you for doing this. And before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask, do you have any resources or references or books or courses or anything to recommend for people that are watching, just to get more informed on ethics and AI?
I would. I know Pymetrics and HireVue put out. They both have ethical landing places and things that they talk about. Where to go to find. Um, Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer. Like that. That's how sad this is. So even for being in this for so long,
Yeah.
there are people that are working kind of on a global scale where they're trying to come up with global standards. But even when those standards are created, I would argue your viewers would have a hard time finding them because
Hmm.
yeah. So unfortunately, there's not a good place to go. They An IO psychologist who can program or is a little bit more of a hybrid would be an excellent person to talk to because they understand both worlds, and there are a lot of those out there where you've had IO psychologists that then kind of turn to the data science track and they become real heavy hitters when it comes to AI ethics.
Well, hopefully this talk inspires someone out there who's listening to develop resources and put stuff out there.
Yeah, and I'm always happy to answer ethical questions directly too. I do get busy, I'm sure, like Kate does, but as those questions come through, I try to prioritize them.
Great. Whoever's listening, message Ben Taylor on LinkedIn. He will answer every single one of your questions. He's just volunteered.
Right.
How nice. Thank you, Ben.
That's
Well,
right.
thank you
All
so
of
much
them.
for your time.
And I'll answer them within 10 minutes, always.
10 minutes? Wow,
Yeah.
that's a
I,
delay. I
I just
usually answer
stare at my
within a
phone. I stare at my phone like this all day.
minute. Exactly. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. And thank you, Ben, for being on the live show.
Okay. Thanks, Kate. It's been fun.
All right. I